There is a secret that no one wants to say out loud. A secret that makes religions uncomfortable and scholars nervous. A secret older than temples, older than scripture, older than any law written by human hands. Many ancient mystics did not try to escape the body. They used the body to reach the divine. They believed that spirit does not float above flesh. They believed that spirit lives inside flesh. They believed that the path to God is not always found in silence and fasting. Sometimes it is found in breath, in heat, in surrender, and in the trembling moment when thought is gone and only presence remains. This idea sounds dangerous only because people were trained to fear the body. For many centuries, the world was told that desire is a trap, that pleasure is shameful, that holiness can only be reached through denial. The body was treated like an enemy, and the soul was treated like a prisoner living inside it. But the oldest spiritual traditions tell a different story. In the ancient world, there were schools of thought, secret orders, and hidden temples where seekers practiced with the body, not against it. They did not see sex as a distraction. They saw it as a doorway. To understand this, you must see what happens in the human mind during deep pleasure. In the world of the mystics, the mind is the cage, and the ego is the lock. Every fear, every memory, every wound, every story you repeat to yourself is a bar in that cage. During a moment of intense pleasure, the mind begins to dissolve. Control breaks. Thought disappears. For a small moment, there is no name, no past, no future, no fear. The mystics called this a little death, not the death of the body, but the death of the self that always speaks inside your head. In that instant of silence, something greater can be felt, a presence without voice, a love without shape, a truth too large for language. The mystics believed that this moment is not dirty. They believed it is sacred. In simple words, the moment of climax is a crack in the wall of the ego, and through that crack, light can enter. When two lovers give themselves completely, the body stops pretending. Every mask falls. Every lie is burned. There is only breath, skin, heat, pulse, and surrender. In that surrender, the self melts, and what remains is pure awareness. This awareness feels like freedom. It feels like falling into a place with no edges, no rules, no judgment. Many seekers spent their entire lives to feel that moment without fear. Rumi wrote that real love burns away the self. He was not speaking of romance in the simple sense. He was speaking of a fire that eats the ego, a fire strong enough to erase the separation between the lover and the beloved. The mystics said that when two bodies move with full presence, they no longer feel like two. They feel like one river with two currents. They feel like one breath inside two lungs. The borders disappear. The world disappears. There is only now. And in the now, the divine can be felt like a warm ocean underneath the skin. Most people think of sex as physical. They think of it as a private act, small and hidden, something to be done behind closed doors and forgotten in the daylight. But to the mystics, the body was a temple, and pleasure was a prayer. They believed that the human soul is asleep most of the time, trapped inside thoughts, fears, and memories. They believed that deep pleasure shocks the soul awake. It gives a taste of what it feels like to exist without walls. Once a person has felt that taste, they begin to search for something greater. They begin to ask why that moment feels more real than normal life. They begin to understand that the body is not an obstacle. It is a key. There is no shame in the flesh. Shame was taught by men. The body was made by something older than any scripture. And inside every touch and every breath There is a spark of the same power that spins stars and moves oceans. The mystics did not worship the body. They honored it. They learned its secrets. They discovered that the path to God is not always above us. Sometimes it is already inside our blood, waiting for us to be brave enough to feel it. To understand why ancient mystics used the body as a path toward the divine, we must step away from the modern world for a moment. Today, people live surrounded by noise and distraction. Their minds jump from one thought to another. They are always moving, always planning, always worried about the next hour, the next day, the next year. The mind becomes heavy, like a chain that never unlocks. In this noisy world, silence feels uncomfortable, and stillness feels strange. The modern person spends more time thinking than feeling, more time fearing than breathing, more time escaping than living. So it becomes easy to believe that the body is simple and that spirit is something separate. But the mystics did not believe this. They believed that the body is the doorway to the inner world. They believed that the body speaks a language older than thought, older than memory, older than any word spoken by a human tongue. The body does not lie. When it is hungry, it asks. When it is tired, it falls. When it is hurt, it shakes. When it is touched with love, it opens. No philosophy is needed. No religion is needed. The body is honest in ways the mind refuses to be. The mind can invent stories. The body cannot. The mystics followed the body because they wanted truth, not imagination. They wanted direct experience, not belief. They wanted to feel God, not talk about God. They saw that during moments of deep pleasure, the body becomes free from thought. In that freedom, a part of the soul can finally breathe. Some will say that this sounds like a celebration of desire, but the mystics did not treat desire like a master. They treated desire like a horse that can carry you to a place the mind cannot reach. If desire controls you, you remain trapped. If desire is guided with awareness and trust, it becomes a tool of awakening. In many ancient schools, lovers were taught to breathe slowly, to move with full attention, to listen with the skin, to feel each heartbeat, and to enter the moment with no mask and no fear. Pleasure was not rushed, not grabbed, not forced. It was allowed. It was opened like a flower. In this slow surrender, the walls inside the mind began to melt. The ego hates surrender. The ego wants control. The ego wants power. When two people surrender to each other with full presence, the ego loses its throne. For a short time, it disappears. What remains is something pure and silent, a deep awareness without name. Some mystics said that this awareness is the true face of the divine, a presence without form, a love without condition, a light without shape. They believed that the divine does not hide in the sky. The divine hides in the spaces inside the human heart, and those spaces can open when the body is trusted. There are ancient texts that speak of sacred union, not union of bodies alone, but union of souls inside bodies. When two lovers give each other complete permission to be real, to be vulnerable, to be open, something powerful happens. Breathing becomes like prayer. Touch becomes like music. Time disappears. In that moment, every barrier between self and world melts away. The mystics called this state the ocean. The ocean is not a place. It is a feeling of infinite depth inside a single breath. In the ocean, there is no fear, no guilt, no shame, only love, only awareness, only presence. This is why many spiritual traditions tried to hide these teachings. They were too powerful, too liberating. If a human discovers that God can be felt inside the body, then temples are no longer needed. If a human learns that the divine lives in their own breath, then no priest can control them. True spirituality makes people free, and freedom scares those who love power. So shame was created. Fear was created. Walls were built around desire. The body was called sinful. Pleasure was called dirty. But the mystics kept the secret alive. They whispered it from teacher to student. They hid it in poetry and music. They left clues in stories and symbols. The secret survived. The secret is simple. The path to the divine is not always above you. Sometimes it is already flowing in your blood. The body is not the enemy. The body is the bridge. The moment of surrender is the key. And when the self disappears, the divine begins to speak in silence. There is a reason why the most ancient temples were built in circles and not in straight lines. The circle is the shape of surrender. It has no beginning and no end. It has no corners and no sharp places. When two lovers meet with full presence, they form a circle inside their bodies and inside their breath. This circle was called a sacred mirror. In that mirror, each lover sees not only the other, but also something much deeper. They see the places inside themselves that need love. They see the wounds that need light. They see the fears that need to dissolve. The body becomes a teacher, and pleasure becomes the lesson. The mystics understood this long before modern science existed. They knew that the body can heal the heart in ways that words never can. Modern life tries to separate love from the body. It tells people that sex is just physical. It tells people that pleasure is only desire. It tells people that the soul lives in the mind and not in the skin. But this is not true. The body stores memory. Every kiss is a story. Every touch is a language. Every moment of surrender writes itself into the nervous system. When pleasure arrives with safety and trust, the body begins to release fear that has been trapped for years. The breath stops hiding. The heart stops freezing. The mind stops fighting. This is why the mystics believed that sex can open the soul. Not because the act is physical, but because the act removes the armor that the self uses to protect its pain. There are moments during deep connection when the breath of one person moves into the breath of another. It feels like a single wind passing through two bodies. In that moment, the world outside disappears. Voices fade. Thought melts. There is only sensation and awareness. Some mystics said that this is the first doorway, a doorway into a state where the mind is no longer the master. They believed that if you follow that doorway with trust, something holy wakes up inside the chest. It feels like a warm light growing beneath the ribs. It feels like a soft fire that does not burn. It feels like truth. Pleasure becomes a meditation. Every motion becomes slow and intentional. Every sound becomes like a sacred chant. Every cell in the body becomes awake and alive. The mystics taught that the body has its own wisdom, and if you stop fighting it, it will guide you toward deeper freedom. They believed that pleasure is not the goal. The goal is surrender. In surrender, the ego melts and the divine can enter. The body becomes the altar, and the heart becomes the temple. Two people become one prayer without words, but surrender is not easy. The ego is afraid of being seen. It hides behind pride. It hides behind control. It hides behind silence. When lovers open to each other without defense, the ego begins to die. It feels like danger. It feels like falling. It feels like losing control. But the mystics taught that this is the most important moment. The self that is afraid must be allowed to dissolve. Only then can the soul rise. Only then can the divine step forward. In ancient writings, the climax was called the peak. The peak was not just the release of the body, it was the moment when the self breaks like a shell. In that break, there is a flash of pure awareness, a moment where everything is light and nothing has a name. Some mystics said that this flash is the closest a human can come to the experience of the divine while still living inside flesh. They said that the soul remembers this moment long after the body rests. They said that once the soul remembers the peak, it will begin to search for it again, but in new ways. Not just in sex, but in meditation, in music, in silence, in prayer, in breath. The peak shows the soul that freedom is possible. It shows that there is a place beyond fear, beyond shame, beyond story. It shows that love is not small, and God is not far. The mystics used this moment as a key to unlock the deeper path. And once the door was open, they walked through it with their entire being. When the ancient mystics spoke of sacred union, they did not speak of conquest or possession. They spoke of merging. They spoke of a state where the skin does not feel like a border and where the heart does not feel like a closed room. They believed that the deepest form of connection is not found in the motion of the body, but in the surrender of the soul. In this surrender, love stops being a word and becomes a force. It moves like water. It breathes like a living flame. It changes the shape of the self until the self is no longer made of walls, but made of space. The mystics said that real union is not something you do. Real union is something you become. To become union, the body must soften, the mind must loosen, the breath must be slow, fear must be allowed to fall apart. This is why sacred practices taught lovers to move without hurry, to touch without demand, to feel without judgment. They believed that if two bodies move with trust, the heart will open on its own. The heart opens like a door that has been locked for many years. At first, it opens only a little, because the mind is afraid of what will be seen. But if the moment is safe, the door opens wider. The heart begins to remember that it was built for love, not for defense. It begins to remember that it was made to shine, not to hide. And with every breath, the body becomes lighter, warmer, freer. Many people think of sex as an escape. The mystics thought of sex as a return to the original state of being, a state before fear, before shame, before the mind learned to doubt its own worth. In that return, lovers become like children made of light. Their touch is not hurried or hungry. Their touch is curious, gentle, and full of wonder. Time moves differently here. Every second feels wide and deep. Every sound feels like a secret song. The world outside becomes distant, as if it were only a dream. The only reality that exists is the space between two hearts beating in the same rhythm. The mystics believed that this rhythm is the language of the divine. It is the sound of the soul waking up. It is the sound of the walls inside the heart breaking down. When two lovers stay inside this rhythm long enough, something begins to change in their awareness. They stop feeling like separate beings. They stop feeling like minds trapped in bodies. They begin to feel like waves of the same ocean. This is the moment when the boundaries of the self begin to melt. Desire becomes devotion. Pleasure becomes prayer. Every breath becomes sacred. At the peak of this experience, the body trembles, the mind collapses, and the ego dies for a short moment. There is a flash of pure light inside the skull, a burst of warmth inside the chest, a pull that feels like the entire world is inhaling through the heart. The mystics said that this is the moment when a human touches the divine. There is no thought. There is no fear. There is no memory. Only presence. Only peace. Only love so large it feels like the body is too small to hold it. The peak is not an end. It is a beginning. It is a door that opens into silence. A silence so full that it feels like the air is made of gold. After the peak, many lovers feel a strange and beautiful stillness. They feel soft. They feel open. They feel like the world is brighter and quieter. The mystics believed that this stillness is a gift. It is the echo of the divine passing through the body. It is the soul remembering where it came from. They taught that if lovers rest in this stillness, if they breathe slowly and hold each other without words, the door will remain open. The divine will stay close. The heart will keep expanding. The world will feel different, softer, kinder, more real. This is why the mystics saw sex as a spiritual path, not because of the motion, but because of the transformation. The self that enters the union is not the same self that leaves it. Something old breaks. Something new is born. The heart learns how to feel without armor. The soul learns how to speak without words. The body learns that it is not a prison. It is a temple made of living light. The ancient mystics understood that the body is a doorway, but they also knew that not every doorway is open. Some people touch each other without presence. Some people kiss without feeling. Some people give their bodies yet keep their hearts locked behind steel walls. In this state, the body becomes only flesh, and the act becomes only motion. Nothing changes. Nothing awakens. Nothing opens. The mystics taught that sacred union begins long before the bodies meet. It begins in the mind that learns to soften. It begins in the heart that learns to trust. It begins in the breath that learns to slow down and let go. Without this opening, the act is only physical. With this opening, the act becomes a spiritual fire. To create that fire, lovers must become honest. Not honest in words alone, but honest in presence. The body cannot pretend. The soul cannot pretend. When two people meet without masks, without roles, without judgment, something powerful happens. The heart begins to shine like a lantern in the dark. Wounds rise to the surface, not to cause pain, but to be released. The body begins to speak its ancient language, a language made of heat and pulse and breath. The mind steps aside. The ego loses its balance. A deeper intelligence takes control, an intelligence older than fear and older than thought. The mystics said that this intelligence is the spark of the divine living inside human skin. When pleasure rises slowly, when it is not rushed or stolen, when it is allowed to grow like fire under soft hands, the nervous system begins to shift. Muscles unlock. Breath deepens. Old pain leaves the body like dust carried by the wind. The mystics believed that this is a kind of cleansing. The body purifies itself through pleasure. Shame burns. Fear melts. The heart becomes light. Lovers begin to see each other not as bodies, but as souls wrapped in flesh. This sight is rare and powerful. It is the sight that the mystics spent their entire lives trying to reach. During sacred union, the body becomes a field of energy. Every inch of skin feels alive, awake, alert. It is as if the soul has moved into every cell. There is no space that feels empty. Everything feels holy. Touch becomes a form of prayer. Breath becomes a form of music. Movement becomes a form of worship. The lovers are no longer doing. They are being. They are not forcing pleasure. They are allowing pleasure. And the body responds with waves that feel like light moving beneath the skin. The mystics believed that this light is the presence of the divine. When the peak arrives, it does not feel like a small moment. It feels endless. It feels like falling and flying at the same time. The body shakes because the mind cannot hold the experience. For a few seconds, the self is gone. There is no name, no fear, no identity, only existence, only presence, only light. The mystics called this the inner explosion. It is a silent explosion inside the soul, where every wall and every barrier breaks under the weight of love. After the explosion, the world feels different. The body feels soft. The heart feels open. The air feels like it is filled with peace. Some people believe that this state ends when the body rests, but the mystics knew another secret. The state can continue. The door can stay open. If lovers breathe slowly and remain close, if they stay in silence and allow the heart to speak without words, the divine does not leave. The body continues to glow. The soul continues to expand. The heart continues to wake. This is not fantasy. This is biology and spirit working together in perfect harmony. The mystics taught that every human is born with the ability to reach this state, but only a few dare to enter it. Most remain behind the walls of fear. Most are afraid of surrender. Most are afraid of love. Sacred union is not for the fearful. It is for the brave. It is for those who want to know themselves in the deepest possible way. It is for those who want to feel the divine, not in temples built of stone, but in temples made of flesh and breath. The path is simple. The path is real. The path is ancient. The path begins in the body. The path leads into the soul. The mystics believed that every human carries two selves. The first self is the mask. It is made of fear and memory and old beliefs. It is the self that worries, the self that hides, the self that compares, the self that doubts. This self is loud and restless. It wants control over everything. The second self is the soul. The soul does not worry. The soul does not compare. The soul is not afraid of anything. The soul is quiet like deep water and strong like sunlight. The trouble is that most people live their entire lives inside the mask. They forget that the soul exists. They forget that another self lives beneath the noise. The mystics used sacred union to break the mask. They used pleasure to cut through fear. They used surrender to set the soul free. During deep pleasure, the mask begins to crack. The mind cannot hold its shape. Thought cannot keep its balance. The body feels too much, and the heart opens too wide. The mask loses power. It begins to dissolve. Some people are terrified of this moment because they believe that if the mask disappears, they will lose themselves. But the mystics taught the opposite. They said that when the mask dies, the true self appears. The true self is not built from stories. It is not built from fear. It is not built from memory. It is pure awareness, pure presence, pure love. Sacred union was the tool. It was the fire that melted the mask, the heat of breath, the pulse of skin, the movement of bodies. All of it worked together to silence the mind. When the mind is silent, the soul begins to speak. It speaks without words. It speaks through feeling. It speaks through the soft warmth spreading from the heart to the rest of the body. The mystics listened to this voice. They let it guide them deeper. They followed it into a place where the self is no longer small. In that place, everything feels connected. The lovers feel connected to each other. They feel connected to the world. They feel connected to something greater than both. Some ancient writings describe this state with simple images. Two candles standing side by side. Separate flames at first, Then the flames touch. The flames merge. Two fires become one fire. Two lights become one light. The mystics believed that when this happens, love is not between the lovers. Love is the lovers. They are not bodies touching. They are souls rising. In that rise, the divine becomes visible, not as a figure, not as a voice, not as a concept. The divine becomes visible as a feeling larger than the body and deeper than the mind. After the peak, after the explosion of light and breath, the lovers fall into stillness. The stillness feels heavy and soft at the same time. The world outside moves, but the lovers do not notice. They exist in a space without time. The mystics called this space the afterglow. The afterglow is not just physical, it is spiritual. During the afterglow, the body feels open, the heart feels exposed, the soul feels awake. If the lovers stay here, if they breathe and rest in each other, the door to the divine stays open. Every second feels sacred. Every heartbeat feels like a prayer. Many people have felt a small taste of this without understanding it. They feel calm after love. They feel soft. They feel clear. They feel close to something they cannot explain. They think it is only emotion. They think it is only chemistry. But the mystics knew the truth. They knew that the body remembers the divine. Each moment of sacred union leaves a mark on the soul. The soul grows brighter. The heart grows wider. The mind grows quieter. Life begins to feel different. Colors look brighter. Music sounds deeper. The world feels alive. This is why the mystics treated sex as a spiritual practice. It was not about desire. It was not about pleasure alone. It was about awakening. The body was the key. The heart was the door. The divine waited on the other side. Every lover who walked this path became a seeker. Every seeker who stayed on the path became a mystic. The path was never forbidden by heaven. It was only forbidden by men. The mystics knew that the world would fear their teachings. They knew that people who worship rules would hate the idea that the divine could be reached through the human body. They knew that leaders of temples and churches would try to silence them, because a person who finds God through love cannot be controlled through fear. So the mystics hid their wisdom inside poetry, inside stories, inside symbols that only open hearts could understand. They taught their students to feel instead of obey, to breathe instead of kneel, to rise instead of bow. They understood that the human body is not a sin. The human body is a creation of the same force that made stars and oceans and life itself. They believed that rejecting the body is rejecting the divine artist who shaped it. In their secret teachings, they said that every part of the body carries a thread of divine light. The skin carries memory. The breath carries spirit. The heart carries God. When two lovers unite without fear, those threads of light weave together. The body becomes a map. The soul becomes a traveler. The journey is not outward. The journey is inward, deeper and deeper into the truth of existence. No temple can offer this. No preacher can command this. It happens only through real connection, through presence, through love that is not owned or demanded, but given freely like fire from a flame. The mystics taught that passion is not chaos. Passion is energy. When passion is unconscious, it burns without purpose and leaves ashes behind. When passion is conscious, it becomes sacred heat that melts every barrier inside the heart. Lovers who walk this path do not take from each other. They give. They offer themselves like open hands, like open windows, like light shining through glass. There is no force, no fear, no hunger, only surrender. And in that surrender, the divine steps forward. During sacred union, time begins to lose shape. Moments stretch and widen. A single breath can feel like an eternity. Every touch feels like a message. Every sound feels like a secret. The body becomes a landscape of sensation, warm and electric. The soul becomes a sky without clouds. The mystics said that this is the moment when the divine speaks without words. The message is felt in the spine, in the skin, in the heart, in the breath. The body becomes the scripture. The soul becomes the reader. Some ancient texts say that after sacred union, lovers carry a glow inside them. They walk differently. They speak differently. They look at the world with softer eyes. They forgive faster. They love deeper. They breathe slower. The reason is simple. Once a soul has touched the divine, even for a moment, it cannot return to sleep completely. A seed has been planted. A new hunger is born. Not a hunger of the body, but a hunger of the heart. A hunger for meaning. A hunger for truth. A hunger for love that does not die when the body rests. The mystics believed that once this seed wakes, it begins to grow in every part of life. The lover becomes a poet. The poet becomes a seeker. The seeker becomes a light for others. The world is filled with people who feel lost, empty, and alone. They search for answers in books and in churches and in broken places inside their minds. But the mystics whispered that the answer is already inside the body, waiting to be awakened. The answer is in the breath, in the heart, in the moment where the self disappears and only presence remains. Sacred union was never only about two bodies. It was about the divine using two bodies to speak one message. The message is simple. Love is the path. Presence is the key. The soul is the destination. The body is the doorway. The mystics did not fear this truth. They honored it. They lived it. They passed it from heart to heart like a torch carried through darkness. The mystics believed that sacred union is not a gift for the chosen. It is a gift for every human born into a body of flesh. They said that the divine does not hide in distant stars. The divine hides in warmth, in breath, in the pulse of life moving through skin and bone. The world taught people to fear their own bodies, to silence their own desires, to distrust their own feelings. But the mystics taught the opposite. They taught that the body is a cathedral built from living matter, and the heart is the altar where the divine waits. Every heartbeat is a drum calling the soul back to itself. Every breath is a prayer that the mind has forgotten how to hear. Through love, the prayer becomes loud again. They believed that the divine is not an idea. The divine is an experience. It is not spoken through laws. It is spoken through light inside the chest. When two lovers enter sacred union with trust, the divine begins to move through them. It moves in silence. It moves in heat. It moves in the trembling moment when the self dissolves and the soul stands alone without a mask. Many seekers spent their entire lives trying to reach this moment through meditation alone. Some reached it, some did not. But sacred union offered another path, a path through the body, a path through surrender, a path that used pleasure as a bridge instead of a distraction. For the mystics, pleasure was not the enemy of the soul. Pleasure was the language of the soul. They said that no temple on earth is as holy as two lovers who meet without fear. No prayer is as powerful as two bodies that breathe together with open hearts. No scripture is as true as the silence after the peak, when the world feels soft and the soul feels vast. In that silence, the divine is not a concept. It is real. It is felt. It is undeniable. The lovers do not see God. They feel God. They feel the presence that lives beneath every thought and every heartbeat. Some called it love. Some called it truth. Some called it the beloved. The name does not matter. The feeling is what matters. The feeling is the doorway. When the peak passes and the afterglow begins, the lovers lie in stillness. Their bodies are warm. Their breath is slow. Their hearts are open like wide windows. In that moment, they feel safe. They feel complete. They feel more human and more divine at the same time. The mystics believed that this afterglow is a sacred state. It is a doorway into a deeper life. If the lovers rest here, if they speak gently or say nothing at all, if they hold each other without masks, the divine will remain. The soul will continue to open. The heart will continue to expand. Life will feel richer. Pain will feel lighter. The world will seem less heavy. Many people spend their lives searching for meaning in work or in money or in status. But the mystics said that meaning is not something you chase. Meaning is something you feel when the soul wakes up. Sacred union wakes the soul. It shows the heart that love is real. It shows the mind that silence is possible. It shows the body that joy is not a sin. When a human has felt this even once, they carry the memory forever. It sits inside them like a hidden flame. On dark days, it becomes a light. On lonely nights, it becomes a reminder. There is more to life than fear. There is more to life than survival. There is something vast and beautiful inside every human, waiting to be touched. The mystics left us a simple truth. The path to the divine is not far away. It lives in the body. It lives in breath. It lives in love that is soft and open and free. Anyone can walk this path. Anyone can feel the divine move beneath their skin. Anyone can let the soul wake. It begins with presence. It continues with surrender. It reaches its peak in a moment when the self disappears and only light remains. And when the light returns to the body, life will never feel the same again. If you have listened to this journey with an open heart and open mind, then the seed has been planted inside you. Let it grow. Let it breathe. Let it wake you. If this story touched something inside you, if it made you think or feel or remember something important, I gently ask you to support this work. You can leave a like, you can subscribe, you can share your thoughts in a comment. Every small action keeps this flame alive, and I will meet you again in the next story, where the soul speaks and the heart listens.